It says we're live on YouTube, so let's do what we do and get the show started. Greetings, Explorer families. This is Mr. Ike, the Executive Director of our Westlake Charter School and our moderator for tonight's town hall. Please introduce yourself, Mrs. Caillou.
Yeah, I'm Mrs. Caillou. I'm the principal of our K-8 charter school. I'm excited.
Welcome to our parent town hall meeting. We're talking about fall planning for the fall of 2020. Mrs. Caillou is going to moderate tonight. I'm going to try and present some slides tonight. We're going to do some live celebrations and some live Q&A. Now, if you want to celebrate, there should be something popping up on your screen shortly that tells you how to do that. Oh, maybe this isn't going to work because we're live on YouTube. Oh, yeah, let me try that little button. There it is. You can go to the link that's on the screen right now if you want to enter a celebration. Mrs. Caillou, we sent out the link earlier via email. Is there any celebrations in the responses that you wanted to share with us so far?
Yeah, we have a couple coming in already. So can I take the first one?
Yeah, go for it.
We have Sherry Cantor. She shared, I'd like to celebrate my daughter's third grade teacher, Miss Ho, for setting up Google Meets once a week. My daughter loved being able to connect with her classmates and teacher just like they would during morning meeting. She's really going to miss her. That's a great celebration.
Yeah, Miss Ho is fantastic, and Ms. Cantor, you are fantastic. Thank you for your celebration. I'm going to see if I can get these slides going forward. Hey, this first celebration on our slide deck says a virtual open house. I don't know if we've had a chance to publicly really celebrate this, except for maybe at the board meeting, but hey, the fact that we not only committed to continue to have an open house, but the fact that it came off so beautifully, and all of our teachers made these amazing videos. And I'd like to celebrate at the virtual open house the virtual art show. It was phenomenal. So I loved that. Do you have another celebration in the response form yet?
Yeah, Mrs. Houston, Amber Houston said, I'd like to celebrate the letter the board and staff sent to our community yesterday. I appreciate the commitment to reflection, awareness, and equality. What a great celebration. I also would like to celebrate the board and staff for that letter to our community.
We had such a great board meeting. It was, granted, it was 3 hours long on YouTube. Families, we'll try to keep this town hall shorter. But yeah, that topic came up over and over again as a celebration. What a commitment by our school. Love that. Let's see. Another slide here is that at the end of the school year, we held a virtual coffee talk. Mrs. Houston was a part of that, as was Jess Wilson. And what a fun time we had at that show. And then, 8th grade promotion, right? This was phenomenal. We had the parade where people drove through and got all their I would say diplomas, but their promotion certificates, and then of course the online celebration along with the family dinner, the 8th grade dinner. Just a great job to everyone involved. If some of that didn't bring a tear to your eye, I don't know what will, because that was amazing to see our families come through the parking lot. Any other celebrations popping up? I think I've got one more.
Yeah, we have one from Suhan Kanemo, and it says, I would like to celebrate my son Edward and all the students at Westlake Charter who have been so resilient and teaching adults how to adjust. It's definitely true. Our students have been amazing. Kids are so resilient, much more than adults are, and they've just been the role models for us. And so, yeah, I agree with that celebration 100%.
Did she say celebrating the kids for teaching us adults about resilience and perseverance?
How to adjust.
I love that.
A good celebration.
I love that, and they're going to continue to lead us the farther we go into all of this. That's phenomenal. I love that celebration. Let's see. There's one more up here on this slide deck. The virtual field day. Do you want to take this one, Ms. Caillou? You can take it if you want.
Yeah, I had such a fun time just watching on social media, but also preparing. I got to work with the PE team to create this, and it was just so fun to watch it happen out in the community and just bring together. Normally we'd be out in the field and the blacktop celebrating, but it was all over Natomas, and it was such a fun celebration to keep that tradition alive on the last day of school, and families really had fun, and they were super creative, and the kids just had a great time. So
it was great. We did.
Families.
Yeah. We did all the challenges. We did the cookie challenge and the relay races and the chalk it up. I mean, we did all the challenges at my house. It was awesome. Hey, are you looking in the form? Are there other celebrations we should acknowledge before we move forward?
Yeah, we have one more from Mindy Johnston. It says, I want to celebrate how hard our teachers and staff worked to make something out of nothing when the shelter in place began. What a bunch of total rock stars. You pivoted to distance learning much faster than other schools in our area, and you made sure our kids felt loved, heard, and connected to their community still. I continue to be impressed and thankful for the incredible teachers and staff at Westlake.
Oh,
what a wonderful celebration. Thank
that is
you.
so great. And hey, buckle up because the fall is going to be fascinating as we roll out what it looks like in the fall. And I think it's going to take innovation and iteration and continual growth to make it the magic that is Westlake Charter School. But Mindy, you're right. We've got the right people, the right teachers, the right parents, the right kids. I mean, this place more than anyone else can tackle, all the challenges that we face and really demonstrate what's possible. So that's phenomenal. Mrs. Caillou, you are the fall planning, town hall meeting moderator. Will you explain to our YouTube audience what are the expectations for this town hall meeting?
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me do that. So, tonight we're going to present some guidelines that we have been given from the state of California, from our Sac County Office of Education, and our potential responses to those guidelines. So what is the school taking those guidelines and what's our response? We also would like to answer any clarifying questions. That form came out to you to be able to answer them. It's going to come up on the screen here. But just to make sure that we have the opportunity, hopefully throughout the presentation, we'll answer a lot of questions, but we'll have the chance at the end to do some Q&A too. So hopefully that's another one of our expectations is we'll answer some questions. And then at the very end, we want your feedback from this focus group of families watching. They're so important to us as we make decisions. And so at the very end, we'll ask you to participate in a survey even before you hop off the computer tonight, because we really want your feedback to help us as we move forward. So that's our expectations of our town hall, and we're excited to get moving on it.
It's great. Thank you, Mrs. Caillou. Families, I'm going to we had a 3-hour board meeting about this topic. You can watch the entire thing on YouTube. We've taken that, we've kind of condensed it down to what we think is about 35 minutes. So we're going to try and, power through some slides and try to answer all the questions that you gave us in advance, along with a lot of the answers that we've developed over this last month of planning. And then at the end of the show, like Mrs. Caillou said, we'll try and do a bunch of Q&A and make sure we answer as much as we can. Anything that doesn't get answered tonight, if we get too many questions, then we'll just roll over into a frequently asked questions document, make sure it gets in the Westlake Weekly. But buckle up. We're going to try and power through some slides right now and give you all of our best first thinking. And we are wide open to questions, and we really need you to fill out that survey at the end of this night, because you are now our focus group. You'll have more information than anybody, and you'll have to help guide our thinking. So can we dive in, Ms. Caillou?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, you're the moderator.
Yeah, our first question is, I think everybody's asking, when will school open?
Yeah, and that is easy to answer, but it'll take 3 slides. The easy answer is we're going to open on time on August 12th, and that is when school will officially open. But before school opens, actually, our summer base program is going to open. If you didn't see it in the Westlake Weekly this weekend, you can go back and take a click at it. But on July 6th, we plan to open up our base summer program, of course, following all the guidelines from the Sacramento County Office of Education, the Sacramento County Public Health Department, and you can see some of that information in the newsletter that went out in this week's Westlake Weekly. And we're going to have people pre-register who are interested in going to the base program. Now, gosh, why are we opening up base? Well, for one, our families need it. People have been in shelter in place, and people have been on distance learning since March 12th, and people are ready to kind of move into a space where we can get some child care here on campus. The second piece is it gives us an opportunity to really open up in a very small fashion, very small groups of students on campus, working our protocols, our processes, and our procedures to make sure as we grow in the fall, we're more prepared. And so we'll be opening up base on July 6th. And then the first day of school is August 12th, and today we're going to talk about all of the protocols, processes, and procedures that will help us actually do that. Is it okay if I just jump in and answer this question?
Absolutely.
Gosh, families, we all talk about all the things that are going into the opening of the fall. What will the schedule look like? What does personal protective equipment look like? Our children wearing masks, our staff wearing masks. How often are we going to wash our hands? How do we sanitize the room? And we have to think about those logistics. I know we do because I'm thinking of them. I know you're thinking of them. And so we're going to put those right here. We're going to talk about those tonight. But when school opens in the fall, it's more than just processes, protocols, and procedures. When school opens in the fall, it's Westlake Charter School. Your student comes through the gate and they got some hand sanitizer and they get to their classroom and we'll do some health screening because that's what the guidelines say to do. But we enter into that classroom and it's our classrooms led by our amazing teachers, staffed by our incredible instructional aides. We have our classrooms that are our safe rooms for our children, and there's going to be joyful learning and expression and collaboration the way that Westlake does. Yes, will we have to adhere to 6 feet of social distancing? Of course, because that's what the guidelines are going to tell us. But this school is not the guidelines. This school is what happens when we all collaborate, and it's going to be Westlake, and it's going to be us working together, and it's going to be joyful and safe, and we're going to adhere to our core values and our mission of demonstrating what's possible when school and community collaborate to create inspiring adults. And so what will school look like? Well, tonight we'll talk about all this part, the logistics, but I don't want you to take your eye off the ball. Westlake is not just the logistics. We are Westlake because we do what we do the way that we do it together. And let's not forget about that. When our children get to our classrooms, they're going to be showered with love from their teachers and support from all of the structures that we have here at Westlake. So we'll dive into that as we go. Next slide.
Yeah, the next question is, and I think people are wondering, what preparations are being made to start school? We know there's going to be a lot of them. Yeah. So you want to start to talk about that, Mr. Ike?
Yeah, look, so I've been an educator for 20 plus years here in Natomas. I've been a high school administrator, district office, a charter school, a K-8. I'm a K-12. I've never in my career seen a group of people work as hard as the teachers are right now, and it's summer break. The admin team, the classified staff, people are preparing like I've never seen before, and my hat is off, and my heart is so warm because of what everyone is pouring into this project to make sure that we first follow health and safety guidelines and then live up to our mission. And so what type of preparations are we making? Let's take a look. First, we demonstrate what's possible in school and community collaborate. So what does it look like to collaborate with our community? Hey, part of it is tonight. We are collaborating with you as our parents, but we have so many community partners to talk about. The first one, though, is each student will be assigned to a classroom. And you're like, well, of course they are, duh. No, many districts in our region, across our state, are having to make decisions about what does independent studies look like. They take a student, they put them on an independent studies roster, and they're not attached to a classroom. That's a different model than we're to do at Westlake Charter School. Every student's going to be assigned to a classroom. Now, if your family decides at the end of all this, hey, we're not ready to physically come back to school yet, that's your choice, and you can utilize our long-term distance learning model, which is going to be awesome this year. It's going to look a little different than the spring, and I'll talk about that. But if you decide to not be part of our physical classroom on campus during the school year, you're still a part of a classroom community. We demonstrate what's possible in school and community collaborate. Those classroom communities are incredibly important to us. If you're attached to an independent studies teacher and it's your birthday, they might celebrate you. But if you're attached to a classroom and it's your birthday, or your dog has puppies, or you have this opportunity to share with this community who you are as a human, and that's an important part of who we are. So every student belongs to a classroom. Every classroom belongs to a grade level. Every grade level belongs to the greater part of what is Westlake Charter School. So we will work together with our communities, within communities, within communities, to make sure that we are all making the right decisions for all of our focus areas. Our school is part of a greater community, the Natomas community of schools. The Natomas Unified School District, NP3, Natomas Charter School. We are meeting with the leaders of these organizations and working together to decide how we work through these crises together. And Natomas is part of Sacramento County's family of schools, and Sacramento County is part of California. And each one of these community partners is a collaborator for our success. And so we get to health and safety guidelines next. You're going to see that a lot of it comes from the state or from the county or from our regional partners and other leaders. And so it's really important to recognize that from the state of California all the way down to that classroom, we start with community collaboration. We have 5 areas that we're focusing on. And I want to tell you about the 5 areas. And then tonight we'll focus on just 2 of them. But the reality is, until we focus on health and safety, nothing else matters. Until we figure out what are the health and safety guidelines during a pandemic crisis, until we figure out all the protocols, processes, procedures, and logistics that make sure our students and our staff are safe and healthy, then nothing else really matters to us. And we are mission driven. I mean, we're that school that loves education. We love innovation, and we love talking about how we facilitate learning. But we're going to pause for one moment and say, hey, all we're going to talk about at first is health and safety. After that, we can dive into academic and social emotional instruction. You might be thinking, hey, our kids had some learning loss over the spring, and we are addressing that. We have teams of people already work on the academic side. But maybe more importantly, a lot of us are saying, my student needs to get back to school to be part of that community for that social emotional side. And you have to believe that we are 100% focusing on that. We have teams working on it right now. But all of those team plans can't come forward until we really regulate how health and safety is going to look. How it's going to affect our schedule, how it's going to affect our daily protocols, how are we going to operate in focus area 1 so the focus area 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 all come to fruition. Focus area 3, tiered supports. If your student is served by our amazing student support services program, if you're a GATE student, gifted and talented education, if you're a student who's an English language learner and you're supported by our teams, all those tiered supports will continue to be a part of what we do going forward. In the spring, it was tough. As we launched distance learning, we had to rally the troops and hold our community together. But now we've had planning time. And as we go into the fall, this is all going to look much more like school. We're going to be moving forward through the standards and working together to make sure that every student gets everything they need. But first, it starts with health and safety. And this number 4 here is the other point we're going to talk about tonight, and that is logistics and operations. What are the health and safety guidelines, and how do they operate or operationalize within the school day? And we're going to talk a lot about that. And the 5th one is incredibly important, and we're doing it tonight. It's communication and collaboration with our community. You saw in that previous slide, we're collaborating with community members from across the state, but it's important that we're able to communicate with our families in a very clear way so you know exactly what's happening every step of the way. And we have a communications plan that we'll unveil going forward. But tonight, I really want to focus on health and safety guidelines and logistics and operations so you know how that all manifests on campus.
Yeah, John, thank you. I mean, those 5 buckets are so important, and all of them are equally important, but that health and safety, it just drives so much of our decision-making right now. So one of the questions is, what is guiding our decisions? As we move forward, what's helping to guide our work as a school?
Yeah, it's a perfect question, right? Because there are 1,000 decisions to be made, and how are we making these decisions? There's a couple of ways. There's some guiding documents I'd love to share with you. You can see on the screen right now several guiding documents from the California Department of Education, the Sacramento County Office of Education, the California Health Department. Several guiding documents that we're looking at. I want to kind of walk you through. These guiding documents are each being produced in collaboration with health and safety experts, right? These aren't Westlake Charter School employees. These are people who do health and safety for a living. Very notably, the people involved would be like the Center for Disease Control, the California Public Health Department, the Sacramento County Public Health Department, and then Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, in collaboration with educators from around the state and around the globe. And this is a moment where experts have come together and crafted these guidelines. And so we think at Westlake Charter School, we will be making decisions based on the latest public health recommendations from experts. We are not experts. We are not the people you want to ask. We want to say, what are the experts saying? And how do we operationalize that in a safe way on our campus that respects the social, emotional, and the physical health and safety of our staff, our students, and our community. So we feel good that there's so much guidance out there, but there's a lot of it, and it creates a lot of work, and we'll walk you through some of that work today. You know, aligning our work to these guidelines includes a couple extra pieces that I just want you to hear about. I mean, obviously, we demonstrate what's possible in school and community, collaborate, and these departments are part of our greater community, but the reality is we have great survey data from parents and from staff over this last month, helping to shape what we think is possible. And we're going to ask you to take a focus group survey tonight before this town hall is over, so we really get the latest information, not just from health experts, but from our community, what is possible when we work together. And I just like to say this, it's not rhetorical, it's real. This public health crisis, this COVID-19, this is really an opportunity to demonstrate excellence and responsibility, to demonstrate global perspective. This is a global pandemic, an opportunity to demonstrate stewardship and perseverance, right? If we ditch our core values the time we hit a crisis, then they weren't really core at all. And so I think it's really important for us to look at our mission and our core values and say, Westlake Charter School, this is what we live by. When we talk about health and safety, this is an opportunity to demonstrate these things. And so this is one more guidance piece I'd love to share with you. If you haven't seen this yet, we'll make sure we throw this out there in our follow-up documentation. This is an international study put together by Linda Darling Hammond and a group of researchers. Linda Darling Hammond is probably one of the most well-known educational researchers in the United States right now, and she is the president of the California School Board. She went and did a 5-country international study around 5 different countries that reopened schools and had a 0 or low transmission rate due to school. So how do you open schools and not increase the transmission rate of COVID-19? Well, here's 5 countries that were studied, what they're doing to focus on being safe. And you can see physical distancing, health screening, hygiene instruction, incredibly important, campus cleaning, and then quarantining when sick. Don't come to school, staff, students, visitors, none of us come to school, we're sick. Well, there's some great guidance here from our international community, and from a global perspective, why wouldn't we look at these other countries that have already launched? Some of them are focusing on, hey, we're using outdoor space. So we're already looking around Westlake going, what kind of outdoor space can we use? Some of them are saying we do or don't require masks. Every one of them is saying we are washing hands, teaching kids to wash hands. We are focusing on our youngest kids because they're the hardest ones to teach, about hand washing. So really great guidance here. I encourage you to go read this documentation. This is a research report that has some great evidence for how to do this right. So, boy, there's a lot of information that we're using as our guidance, and that international study is one of them.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I've spent a lot of time in those guidelines and those documents, and they have a lot of information, which is we're grateful for the guidance for sure. The next question is, how are you aligning the guidance with our WCS daily operational plan? So how will those guidance impact our daily operation? That's what I think our community really wants to know is, what's those guidance mean, and how is that going to impact our school?
Yeah, and we'll talk about impact in the next set of slides. We did want to demonstrate, how are we taking so many guidelines and then bringing them down into an operational plan. And we got some great thinkers here at Westlake Charter School. Use a spreadsheet, and they've taken all 256 bullet points from the Sacramento County Office of Education and put one on each row, and then using the columns of this spreadsheet, really curating information to answer the questions posed within these documents. Is fascinating. In the first column of the spreadsheet, it's like, well, which section is this? Health and safety, logistics and operations, academic and social emotional instruction. Is it tiered support? So we start in the first column, and then we introduce on the next column, what problem are they asking us to solve? Then we say, okay, in these columns, what did Sacramento County Office of Education say? What did the Sacramento County Public Health Department say? What did the California Department of Education say? And in this column, what other resources can we acknowledge? Maybe it's that international study, or maybe something out of New York is something we can curate and say, hey, they've got a great idea. So look at all this information we're taking into consideration before we get to the next two columns, which is, how do we create a baseline response? So if the column, if the second column says, how will we do health screening at school? Well, the Sacramento says this, the public health says that, other resources say this. Okay, what's our baseline response? But we're not just going to stop there. Every single protocol we create, we're creating a increased capacity response. Why? Well, because the reality is what you do in kindergarten might look different than 8th grade. An 8th grade team might have an increased capacity to do something a little differently and still remain safe than in kindergarten. So it's okay to come up with a most safe guideline and call that our baseline. And then say, okay, we get it. 8th grade, you can do this. It's increased capacity. And you'll see that flexible theme going through all of our slides tonight because there's no one size fits all. You're talking about 5-year-olds and 13-year-olds and staff members. We have 120 staff members and 600 family members who could potentially come visit on campus. There has to be some guidelines. There has to be flexibility. So a lot of great planning goes in here. And on this spreadsheet, once we get past the baseline and the increased capacity response to each bullet point, we start to talk about implications, right? What are the implications for student, staff, and community training? Every protocol has a training implication. How do we wash our hands? When do we wash our hands? Are we doing health screening? How are we doing health screening, right? So every piece has to have a training component, a communications component. We've got how does it affect our before and after school program? How does it affect BASE? Our board and school policies, right? We have policies that is how we run our school. Well, some of these new protocols will maybe shift our policies. What professional development implications? Our staff are the best in the business, but I have to tell you, we are dealing with students coming back from 5 months of isolation. We need to do some professional development on how to make sure we introduce these guidelines in a way that doesn't increase anxiety. If there's increased focus on hygiene and personal protective equipment, things like that, our staff need to go into it calmly. Hey, no one's going to do it perfectly. No one's going to do it immediately correctly. We do the way we do everything. We're just going to reinforce calmly. We're not going to be disciplining and getting in heightened confrontations with people over the guidelines and protocols. We're going to work as a team to educate all of our people. But that takes professional development and time. So a lot of planning going on. I know this next question is really what everybody wants to hear, Jen.
It is, and it's fascinating. Mr. Ike, we're getting a lot of questions about logistics, about some academics. I know some of them we're going to answer as we go, but Just great questions are coming through. I just wanted to share that.
If there's a question,
the next question. Say it again.
If there's a question you feel like we need to answer, you can pause. I'm going to try and power through the end of the slideshow, and then at the end, definitely the questions that we did not answer, let's get to them.
You got it. So the next question for us is, how do the guidelines impact school? That's really what you're right. That's why our community showed up today. They want to know how this is going to impact school and their children as they come to school in the fall.
Yeah, let's dive in. I mean, this is definitely it. What you see on the screen right now, on the left-hand side of your screen, this is just a screenshot from the Sacramento County Office of Education guideline. That's just one page of 56 pages of guidance, but it's really kind of a high level. It's a lot of the stuff that we're all interested in, and so we've been doing a lot of work around this. And so let's kind of dive in a little bit. This is going to say, hey, we have got to follow the disinfection guidelines for how we clean our campus, when we clean our campus, what type of surfaces get cleaned on our campus, what type of chemicals do we use to clean our campus. There's some great guidelines in there, and we're going to have to follow that. We are going to have to prioritize hygiene. Linda Darling-Hammond and her team said from the California Department of Education, this is it. This is everything. Hygiene is everything. It's the way we keep COVID-19 off of our campus. Let's teach our kids to wash their hands here, but let's teach them to wash their hands at home. Let's teach everyone to not touch their face. When you're wearing a mask, don't touch the mask. All of these pieces have to be an education piece and a real high priority for what we do. We can't just expect people to follow rules. We have to teach and train why hygiene and how hygiene will affect health and safety. And let's get to it. I know everybody's question marking around this, so I'll zoom in on this piece right here. The Sacramento County Office of Education guidelines says face coverings should be worn by all staff and students. It says as feasible, which is kind of great because it gives us a little bit of flexibility. The reality is the California Department of Education and that international study both don't have that flexibility. They go, you got to wear masks. Well, why? You got to wear masks because it's a health and safety thing. We're talking about the health and safety of all of our kids. Sacramento County, who's our local entity, who has the most authority to help guide us, gives us some flexibility. They say, hey, they should be worn. And it's true. I look at it and go, well, if it's the difference of being healthy or not healthy, if that mask makes the difference, then certainly we should consider how that can help. It does give us some flexibility. It says, look, there may be, it may be challenging for some students, or for particular groups, to wear a mask all day. And so that's great because it gives us a little bit of an out to say, okay, when we're in a distanced setting that is safe, those masks can be removed. Now we're talking about when would we wear masks, how would we wear masks, How will we make sure that we come to school and it still feels like school and joyful learning and engaged community and doesn't feel scary? That is the work we will do together. But I don't think we should say masks are off the table, because right here it says you should consider masks as part of your solution. And so we will do it the Westlake way. We will do it together, and we will make sure that we're able to utilize some of that flexibility, because what's possible for an 8th grader is definitely different than what's feasible for a kindergartner. And I think we are all educators and parents and recognize that for sure. So we'll make those determinations on how and when it is feasible for sure. The next one says we're going to have to modify school schedules. There's a whole piece on this coming up. We have to limit visitors on campus. This is Westlake Charter School. This is what we do. We're all about parent collaboration. And so we're going to have to figure out in our baseline response, how do we limit visitors on campus? And then how do we grow to some increased capacity where it's safe to get back to doing what we do? And we've got some models that allow us to grow. But again, remember, starting with baseline, how do we do what's safe for everyone and then become flexible and feasible as we grow? Keep students in smaller groups and create 6 feet of distance between people at all times. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a kindergarten room, but it's going to be a tricky challenge, and we're going to go into it calmly, and we're not going to raise our affective filters, and we're not going to freak out about it, but we're going to do it cool and fun, and we're going to use structures. And I don't know if you've ever been on campus and seen the way our lines walk. This campus is got it together. Our teachers are the best in the business, and they know how to create an atmosphere where people are playing along. This is just a new set of protocols for which our team will have to figure out how to play along. And so we'll space our desks 6 feet apart, and I'll show you that in some slides later. And we have to eliminate large gatherings. And so this is really an interesting piece, right? No dances for our middle school until further notice. No big assemblies until further notice. And that's sad, but it's understandable because we recognize as the transmission rate seems to be increasing in certain regions across the country, it's mostly due to groups of people getting under one roof together. And so we want to definitely eliminate that. So those are the initial impacts. We will go deep dive at a later date with more details, but we want to put those guidelines into place so we can all look at what we're being advised to do by the Sacramento County Office of Education, the California Department of Education, and both departments of health.
Yeah, definitely. And so the next part is, which you brought up on the last slide, John, where one of the impacts is that they suggest maybe changing your schedule. So the question is, how do the guidelines impact the daily schedule of our school?
Yeah, I think to everybody who works in the school business, we're like, oh, I totally get it. I see the math. But I think we need to spell it out, because you might be like, well, wait a minute. Why are those guidelines making school schedules change? I don't see the connection. So let's kind of make the connection. Here's the Sacramento County Office of Education guidelines, and here's a screenshot straight from one of the pages. It says, because of the need for social distancing, every child cannot be on campus at the same time. It says right here, I'll put a little red box around it. It says at this time, schools will be required by the Sacramento County Public Health to modify school schedules to limit the number of students on campus. And then some examples follow. You can do block scheduling, AM, PM shifts. Basically, we have to take turns getting into the classroom. Well, why? Walk me through it. Let's take a look. So here's a picture of a classroom here at Westlake Charter School. Bonus credit, anybody uses the form to tell me whose classroom that is. If that was your classroom last year, you'll know. So here's a classroom at Westlake Charter School, standard classroom. And here's a little diagram of that classroom. And we've done some moving around of the furniture. And we said, how many students can you get into a classroom if they're 6 feet apart? Well, you can see on the slide, it says 16 to 20. You're like, wait a minute, that's not an exact number. Well, let's talk about it. You get more kids in if you measure nose to nose. Johnny sits here and little Jennifer sitting over here. We're exactly 6 feet apart. If you measure between desk to desk, well, we're a little farther apart. And so we have to recognize if a student could sit perfectly still, well, and you can sit perfectly still, well, 6 feet apart, it's perfect. But let's be honest, even if you just do this, you've just closed the distance with the person next to you. So there's some wiggle room. How many students can you fit in a classroom? 16 to 20. Health guidelines, and speaking with the health director from the Sacramento County Public Health Department, she gave a wonderful presentation to charter school leaders this last week, and she said very definitively and clearly, this is real. Take these guidelines seriously. This 6 feet is not a magic number, but we know somewhere in this range is what we need to do to ensure safety. And so if this is the guideline, and we have to spread out by 6 feet, well, then the ramifications are, okay, we can establish 6 feet distance if we're 16 to 20 kids per room. If we want to maximize up to 20, it may include some personal protective equipment or some barriers, right? If you're the student sitting by the door down here, everyone's going to have to walk by your desk to get to the restroom. Well, I would rather not have that desk there, and that takes us from 20 down to 19. Or if you're going to sit in that desk, maybe there's a plastic shield, or maybe you're wearing a mask. We don't know what that looks like, but if we get up to 20 in a room, we're going to have to potentially utilize some type of equipment to make sure we're maximizing that distance. And then here's the reality of the situation. Looking at this, you say, okay, well, we have like 22 to 28 kids per classroom. That's what we have right now. We don't have 20 kids per classroom. So to include our entire community back in the classroom, we'll have to take turns. And that's why everybody's talking about the schedule. Because, okay, it's your turn, it's my turn. We can't put all 28 of us in there at one time. So we're going to have to take turns. And so that's going to have an impact on scheduling. And I've got 5-6 slides on this. So buckle up. Let's walk through it together. We built this out in a flexible model because we recognize that at different points during the year and different points during the even week, things can change. And so let's talk from level 1. Where we are today. We are currently in distance learning. We have been since March 12th, and that is the level that has been the most safe for the students under the current shelter-in-place conditions. So it all goes back to health and safety. If the governor says, hey, freeze, we need to go back to level 1, distance learning, boom. Westlake Charter School has a map for that. It is distance learning, and it is a schedule. You've already been on it. Now I want to talk through distance learning because our last set of distance learning protocols were really built on the fly at the end of trimester 2 going into trimester 3. Well, now we've had time in distance learning. So I'm going to walk you through how this will look different. And if we go to some alternating schedule, all of us may spend some time utilizing distance learning. So it's important we really ramp it up and make the best of it. And so let's take a look at what distance learning looks like coming into the fall. First of all, in the distance learning of the spring, you could probably knock it out in a couple of hours. And the reality is, in the fall, we are introducing new content. You're in a new grade level. You cannot expect to get distance learning done in a couple of hours. It's gonna have a longer, more school day feel to it. So you have to make sure that is something we can do. It also has to have some synchronous and asynchronous component to it. Now, what does that mean? It means that there are some live video stream. So if you're working from home or from an alternate location, that there's some type of live instructional component and maybe some pre-recorded instructional component and maybe some small group work where I'm collaborating with others. And maybe it has some components that are independent a little bit, like when I work at my desk. So it'll look different. Another thing that's different is it'll be a mix of digital and other learning experiences. In the spring, we wished we could have sent workbooks home or cut out materials. We just couldn't get those materials to your homes. And so now with a lot of advanced notice, we're like, oh, great. We can actually do projects that include more than just the Google Classroom. And I love a Google Classroom, but the reality is school is more than just videos and responses. It's about collaboration and physical manipulation of paper products and modeling. And so we'll have that opportunity in the fall. Now, this is really important. Everyone's working toward academic goals each week. It's not like, you're in the classroom and I'm on distance learning. I'm just doing some extra stuff. Everyone has to move together in this model because it's really important, because if you're in class or on distance learning and you're switching back and forth, everyone has to move together. So whatever's being taught on Monday morning in class has to be being taught during distance learning. And that's why we need some asynchronous and synchronous connection to make sure every student is moving forward through the curriculum. And that then means daily attendance is real. Just because we're in distance learning doesn't mean attendance isn't real. And so we have to have visual attendance and check-ins and the opportunity to actually move students forward, give them feedback, work with them in small groups and one-on-one to make sure they are learning what they're supposed to learn, and then be able to offer them a grade and say, hey, this is where you are in the grade book on that. It's going to look, the distance learning will look more like school that we're used to now that we've had time to plan for it. We also get a lot of feedback about that from our parent surveys, so we're honored that people are giving us that feedback and we're working toward it. Our teaching teams are the best in the business and really working on that. So distance learning is a part of the equation. What's the next part? Level 2, orientation. So we could just jump back into our baseline. August 12th, let's jump back in. What's it look like? But the reality is our kids haven't been in school since
Right.
March 12th. And they will have been out for 5 months on August 12th. That means for all of them, other than kindergarten, this will be the longest duration of time they've ever been not in school in their life.
Yeah.
And barring some personal tragedy or trauma. So each one of them has gone through a pretty traumatic experience. And so we have them coming back to school, and school doesn't look the same. It's 6 feet of social distancing, and we talk about hand washing protocols and all these things. We need to train our students. And so we think an orientation model will help do that. We open up school in maybe smaller groups so that everyone feels more comfortable. So we're practicing protocols in smaller groups. So let's take a look what that looks like. Over here you can see like a 4th grade classroom has 28 kids in it. If you break them up into cohort A and cohort B, and they're taking turns using the classroom, maybe Monday, Tuesday, or whatever that looks like, that's 14 students per class. And that might be the new normal at some point. But what if during orientation we found a way to like have these kids in the AM and these kids in the PM, and now you're in groups of 7. Hey, my first time back on campus after 5 months of distance, to come back with just 7 kids and my teacher might make a lot of sense. It gives us the opportunity to reopen school with these smaller cohorts, and during that orientation, we'll have pre-prescribed learning goals. Hey, you got to learn how we're going to use the restroom, how we're going to wash our hands, how we're going to do all these protocols, how we're going to engage in collaboration, how we're going to do morning meeting when we're not sitting in a circle next to each other. What does it look like in the morning since we can't do morning lineup on the blacktop? We have to learn all these things, and so that could look different at different grade levels. So the duration of orientation could be different. And I think our teachers love this idea. Talking with our staff, they said, oh my goodness, yes, let's do orientation, but let's be honest. The 8th graders, they can go through orientation in a couple days and be like, got it, we'll follow this, we understand the but a kindergartner or a 1st grader, instead of taking a couple days, maybe it takes them a couple of weeks. And don't we feel more comfortable about our kindergarten teacher and only 7 kids in a room figuring out all the protocols, practices, and procedures? There's a beautiful African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. This idea that we're going to bring ourselves together in groups and learn to do this safely will then maybe allow us to go from orientation to baseline to maybe getting even more kids back on campus. But we have to start in a place where it is focusing on safety and focusing on bringing our affective filters down and feeling comfortable. And once orientation feels complete, we would roll into the next part of the plan. So orientation could be 2 days for 8th grade, could be 2 weeks for kindergarten. But then we come up with our baseline. What should it look like based on the guidelines of the state of California and the guidelines of Sacramento County Office of Education? What is a baseline? Well, it is probably some shared use of the classroom. Okay, it's cohort A, it's your turn to go to school, and I'm going to be at home doing distance learning and video conferencing and doing what I need to do to stay. Oh, now it's cohort B's turn. And so we have several models of what this could look like from all around the state. The model I'm going to show you right now echoes what we're starting to see a lot of districts starting to gravitate toward. So it may or may not be the eventual model, but it certainly is the one that seems to have the most traction right now. I want to walk you through it. Now remember, our goal is to keep our students learning and moving forward together. This really important concept. Each day is a teaching day and each day is a learning day. So just because you're on the distance learning doesn't mean you can wait till you get back into class to learn, because every single day a teacher's going to be moving the classroom forward together. And you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So here's a school day, right? A school day is typically 8:30 to 3:30, but some of that day might be utilized to shorten the school day a bit and make sure the students who are at home are getting extra video conferencing and feedback and collaboration. So what does the regular school day look like? Okay, cohort A is at school on Monday, and cohort B is distance learning on Monday. They could be distance learning from home. They could maybe be distance learning from base. They could be maybe distance learning from other spaces on campus. But whatever it looks like, A is in the classroom. B is learning the same thing A is learning. They're not doing something different. They're doing what A is doing. We're all moving together. On Tuesday, same schedule. A in class, B on distance learning, so that on Wednesday we have an opportunity to deep clean the campus, scrub down every surface, because the A kids are going onto distance learning and the B kids are coming in. We don't want to cross-contaminate. It's a big part of what the guidelines say to do. But also on this Wednesday, everyone's on distance learning. Maybe we're doing whole class Google Meets. Well, let's think about that for a second. The student who's on A or B, what about the student who decided to be on full-time distance learning? If they were part of some independent studies teacher, they'd never get to be part of this classroom community. But in this model, everybody gets everything they need on Monday and Tuesday, and on Wednesday, and then again on Thursday and Friday. And so I love this model, this thinking from our teachers that says Group A and Group B and the students who are on long-term distance learning are all moving through the week and moving through the standards together. It's not like we're teaching it on Monday, Tuesday, and then teaching it again on Thursday, Friday. We are moving like a classroom unit going through this. So here's Wednesday. You could pull small groups onto campus or pull small groups digitally. A lot of great thinking going on how we can utilize that Wednesday. But then on Thursday and Friday, you can see it just alternates. B is at school in the classroom, and then the group A is on distance learning. So here's some thoughts and scheduling notes that we have on the side. Hey, look, siblings will be assigned the same cohort, right? Oh my goodness. I know Mrs. Houston's watching. She's like, well, how's that going to work with a family with more than one child at home, right? There's also a possibility as we're starting to work out these schedules of like, should we stagger start times to reduce the number of people coming through the fence all at one time? So yeah, that's something we're considering and thinking as we're building out what these schedules look like. And the last piece is, physical time on campus for students will actually be shorter. And I mentioned that a little bit. And that's hey, if we're going to make sure that everybody's moving forward, the teacher has to have some time to jump online and make sure that kids are really getting some small group, communication time when they're not in the classroom. Again, attendance is every day. You can't phone it in. So we need to make sure we're eyeball to eyeball every day, whether that's my teacher, an instructional aide, another staff member, that we're pulling small groups and making sure people get the tiered support and the check-in they need every single day. So, unpacking all of these things I know is a lot. And at home right now, you're like, oh my goodness, this is so much. I can't even breathe. We will work through these together. There'll be more information coming, but as we start to unpack the schedule, I want to talk a little bit about what it could look like after that. So that's our baseline. Let's assume that's our alternating schedule baseline. Well, how might we increase capacity? Like, is there ever a chance that my student could just come to school every day and we're already there? We're already in our minds going, how do we make this happen, Westlake? What's the answer? How can we figure this out? And so while we don't have a plan to unveil, we do have some concepts like, okay, how could you get more kids on campus? Well, number one, if the grade levels can be grouped into class sizes that met social distancing guidelines, okay, well, it says right there we can fit 16 to 20 kids in a class. What if a whole grade level was only 20 kids per class because enough people selected distance learning, or because we grew more classes, whatever it was? How if that happened, maybe we can get more students back on campus. Another one is, and I alluded to it a moment ago, what if there were more spaces on campus that we could open up? Mrs. Hubbard's class has 28 students in 5th grade. Cohort A is in her classroom. What if cohort B, instead of being at home, was doing distance learning somewhere else on campus? Well, now Mrs. Hubbard could walk over here, but we would need a staff member in each place, so we'd have to figure out how to get staffing, but we're scratching on it. How could you do that? How could you get more kids on campus every day? So while I said we'll start with distance learning, we'll grow, maybe we can grow all the way out to a model that looks like this. And again, if the guidelines for social distancing change, and we are going to follow the most recent public health experts, if they come out and say, hey guys, it turns out that you could actually go 4 feet of social distancing and it's fine. Well, then all of a sudden we can put more kids in the classroom. So there's lots of hope that as more information comes out, as we can continue to adjust our practices and really look at our spaces, maybe we can get more kids on campus. One note on this is the California Department of Education has said that other countries that are doing this well are prioritizing their youngest students. How do we get our littlest kids back on campus first? Because we know they're going to struggle the most with distance learning. So if I could get the K1ers back, K1, 2, if I get the youngest kids back on campus first, I think we would prioritize that. And I know that hurts our hearts as a middle school parent because we're like, wait a minute, what about my student? But the reality is If you start behind, you stay behind. That conversation about why do we pour so much work at Westlake Charter School into K1, 2, 3? Well, it's because if you start behind, you stay behind. And we want to make sure that we allocate resources where we're going to get our youngest students probably back on campus earlier, and we'll see how that plays out. No guarantees, but this is definitely the type of information that we're looking at. Whew, that was a lot there. Let's take a look at the final level. So the reason we have these levels is if we started in distance learning, we went to orientation, we went to baseline, and maybe we could get to increased capacity. Well, why don't we just start there? Well, look, what happens if somebody gets sick? The Sacramento County Health Department has already said, look, if a student gets sick or a staff member gets sick, it's possible that that classroom, that grade level, or the whole school could end up all the way back at level 1. And so on quarantine for maybe it's 72 hours, maybe it's 2 weeks. We want to go slow and build our capacity up so that we can do this right. Because any one of us, heaven forbid, we all slide back. And so it's important that we build a schedule that allows us to do that if we need to, but also allows us to go forward one step at a time. And the final step is level 5, and that's full capacity. And the Center for Disease Control has come out and said, hey, this could be 12 to 18 months. And when a vaccine is produced, we maybe go back to normal. But until then, this is the work we need to do as a community to iteratively grow toward our, this new normal. Will it be hard work? Yes. Is it possible? Absolutely. And can it be school again that's fun and engaging and social emotionally supportive and understands our students? Yes, it will be all of those things as we go forward. So I swear I was trying to get to 40 minutes. I think I'm right at 40 plus the first 10. So we should wrap this up. Should I hit these questions? Then we'll take some live questions, Ms. Caillou.
Yeah, these are some questions that came in from our community as they signed up to be a part of this town hall. Some came in. So yeah, let's take a look at those questions and then we'll go over to the ones that have been asked.
Great. All right. So how will we handle learning loss? It's a great question. And I would like to say not only learning loss, but let's talk about the loss of the social emotional support of our community. Look, our teachers are amazing. They all ended school 2 weeks ago, but we have 35 of them who will be in a meeting tomorrow. They're working over the summer to orchestrate these practices to make sure when we come back to school, we have a vertically aligned scope and sequence that says, hey, I'm a 5th grade teacher. Hey, 4th grade, where did you guys leave off? Did you guys cover multiplying fractions or should I cover that? So our team is doing that work, and we're of course been utilizing the digital platforms. We've seen a lot of people logging into Lexia and to Freckle over the summer, so keep it up because that will help with that learning loss. So it's a great question. It's an important question. This one, absolutely. How will we address social emotional learning? Look, yes, we're going to have to wash our hands. Yes, we're going to have to come up with 6 feet of distancing protocols, but the reality is we're still Westlake Charter School. We're still going to utilize our responsive classroom curriculum like we have and always will to have morning meeting. And that means for the kids in class, and we'll have social emotional for the kids who are on distance learning, and even for the people who are on long-time distance learning, they'll be connected to that community. We will make sure that social emotional is at the forefront of everything we do, especially in the beginning. If we do this well first, academics will follow. If we try to rush into academics and don't focus on SEL, social emotional learning, our students who've been suffering from trauma and isolation may not get the academic growth that we need them to make. And so this is important. Recess is incredibly important. Our children need to play and have fun. But if we can't let everyone run up and down the slide because they're all going to touch each other and spread germs, then we have to create a field day every day that is structured and fun and has games and laughter and joy. And we will do that because we're Westlake Charter School. We even look at these structured chat zones. For the middle schoolers, like they don't want field day. Some of them do. They don't want field day. They want to hang out with their friends. So we're already imagining, well, if you put down a grid of dots on the ground and say, hey, middle schoolers, just keep social distances. Well, then they'll go out and use the quad and be cool and do what they do. But they'll at least have structures on campus to show them what 6 feet of social distancing looks like. And then they can do what they do. They can be kids and they can grow up and they can laugh and smile and they can be safe. And of course, we have our Sanford Harmony lessons. These are our social, emotional learning competencies lessons that are built into our curriculum that are utilized throughout our school. And we're going to really focus on those, really focusing on social, emotional wellness this next year. This is so important. I mean, you know, it's one of our 5 focus areas. How will our students be supported? And I'll just quickly say, like, all supports will still be in place, whether we're on distance learning, orientation, a baseline, or increased opportunities. We will be supporting, all of our students, whether they're served by our special education program, our gifted and talented education, English learners. All of this will still be in place for our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. And this question's a great one. My goodness, I'm so glad somebody asked that, because I looked through the slides and said, well, we didn't answer that. Look, if everybody belongs to a classroom, but your family is like, hey guys, look, I love Westlake, I'm going to stay plugged in, but we're not going to physically come back until we know a little more about how the world looks. Hey, we respect that and we totally honor that. If you decide to go on distance learning, we're not going to assign you to an independent studies teacher. You're going to be part of this learning community. You're going to be part of this classroom. When your student's birthday comes around, everyone's going to know it because these are your kids. This is your class. You're part of this community. And when you feel ready to come back, you just come back. And likewise, if you're in an A-B cohort situation and heaven forbid somebody in your family gets sick, hey, you just slip back, you just stay home. And you have access to the full curriculum because we are making sure that all of our students move together. So I hope that makes sense. It's not what everybody's doing, but it is what Westlake is doing, and we feel very proud of this work. I want to go back to this quickly. What will school look like? You can hear all the protocols, practices, and procedures, and you're overwhelmed by the schedule changes and the shifts in protocols. But look, when we come back to school, it's going to be school. It's going to be a teacher, an instructional aide. Your principal will walk past. Students will walk in straight lines. And people will be smiling. We'll be communicating and collaborating. We will develop protocols and hand gestures to make sure we're air high-fiving and feeling the love that is our classroom community. It will be school again. It's terrifying, and I get that. I am a parent at Westlake Charter School as well. Like, I know we're all worried about all these protocols, practices, and procedures, but if we start with health and safety and we move slow through an orientation phase, by the time we get to baseline, it will start to feel like school. And the resilience of our children will shine through, and they will demonstrate what perseverance looks like to us. And we will be lifted by their willingness to engage in joyful learning, regardless of what protocols, practices, and procedures are put in place by the health experts. The children will lead us into what school should look like, because it's for them and it's about them. And they will demonstrate joyful learning, and they will have friendships, and we're just going to adhere to some social distancing guidelines while we do that. And so what will school look like? It won't look the same, but it will look like school, and it should be a joyful place. And so we have, I think, Ms. Caillou, you said we have lots of questions. It's right at the hour, so we're 8 minutes over right now, and that's okay. I say we extend by 15 minutes, and so for any family who's like, I had a hard stop of 1 hour. This is on YouTube. It is being recorded. We'll post it up. But here's what I need you to do. We're going to jump into question and answer live on this show right now. But I need each of you right now to go to your computer, use this bit link right here, https://bit.ly, all lowercase, /WCS fall. That survey is for the people who have watched this town hall. That survey is for the people who are the most informed about what we're thinking. I'm going to close that survey an hour after the show stops, because I don't need anybody filling it out who hasn't watched the show. So if you are watching the show right now, click on there and be filling it out while we do some Q&A. Families, this is I need you to participate, because I need to hear your thinking. You've now seen our thinking. We need to hear your thinking as we go forward. And so let's go through some Q&A here. I will leave on the screen this link so that you can continue to fill it out. I'll put it right up there on the screen. And then Ms. Caillou, let's dive in and answer some questions.
Absolutely. A lot of them came in. I think we kind of checked off in the background. I've been clicking and saying, oh, we answered that question. Okay. So hopefully we answered quite a few of the questions during our presentation. But, we organized it, or I organized in the background of like our different buckets. So I'd like us to kind of go to to maybe the logistics is where we have the most questions right now.
Okay.
One of the questions came through that it said, how will you prepare students for the transition to middle school, specifically going into sixth grade? If you don't mind, could I answer that question?
Yeah, take this. This is a great one.
Yeah, I and specifically they kind of called out, I want to call out Web. Web is, I'm working with a group of 8th grade students right now that are going to, they're being trained, and they are so excited to launch this school year, even if it is with all these social distancing protocols, to get our 6th graders ready for middle school. We also worked with the 5th grade teachers to kind of do some flip grids that helped our 5th grade students feel prepared, but we'll still model some of the same things of what does Meet the Teacher look like? Could it have a different flow? But our web leaders definitely are going to help our transition from elementary to the middle school program, and they are so excited, and we have a passionate group of kids and teachers working on that. So that's an exciting question, but I wanted to make sure I got to say, yeah, we're definitely aware, and we will make sure it feels special to your kiddo for sure.
Yeah, and what does WEB stand for? Where everyone belongs. WEB, where everyone belongs. Such a great leadership club in our middle school where they orient the incoming middle schoolers. It's fantastic, and I know they're working hard on that project right now, and so that our 5th graders becoming 6th graders are going to get the full orientation, whether it's distance or digital or what. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to stay kind of in this logistics realm. We have a pretty simple question. Will lunch have to be eaten in the classroom? That's a good question. John, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, it actually calls out in the Sacramento County Office of Education to utilize boxed lunches because obviously putting everyone in the cafeteria under a singular roof seems like an unsafe set of practices. However, we've already started to talk about, do you have to eat lunch in the classroom every day? Are there some outside spaces that kids could go out and utilize or teachers could utilize? So the answer is we won't be eating in the cafeteria. And while our baseline response is, we can eat in our classroom, the increased capacity response is, maybe there's some outdoor spaces that can be utilized. We've seen some models where people are bringing like beach blankets and they're putting beach towels, and everyone's got like a little beach towel spread out, and you're like, okay, this is where we're having our lunch. So, hey, it's Westlake. Whatever we do, I'm sure it'll be awesome. But yeah, we won't be in the cafeteria because we can have no large gatherings. It's a great question.
Yeah, the next one is still in the logistics category, but it has to do with the academic calendar. Some families are asking, will we keep the same academic calendar, meaning, and we kind of addressed it, we'll start August 12th. Yeah. We plan to have our regular academic calendar this school year. Anything you want to add to that, Mr. Ike?
Look, I mean, it's interesting because the board puts out a calendar every year. Our calendar is adopted. We feel like there's no reason to adjust on the opening day. We feel like August 12th is the day. We're also working in collaboration with NP3, Natomas Unified School District, and Natomas Charter School. Hey, what's your opening day? But also, we try really hard to align spring break, winter break, our October break with these other schools, and so we got our feet dug in the sand. We're like, don't mess with the calendar. Our families love October break. Who knows? Maybe Disneyland opens up again and we'll ever be down there. But we love the calendar so that we don't see the academic calendar changing. Somebody had asked a question about the number of school days. We fully anticipate to do the entire 180 school days this year, even though charter schools have the flexibility of only doing 175 school days. We plan to go the full calendar that's already been published. It's a great question.
Yeah, another parent asked about the August 12th date. Would it be better to wait and start later? But you just kind of answered those questions. We do a lot of collaborating, and right now, our full plan is to start on August 12th, unless something comes out from the public health officials that says start with distance learning.
Yeah, and honestly, there was some rhetoric from the state of California at one point about starting early, and everybody in education panicked because we're like, we only have 59 days left to plan for this opening. But the reality is, we also don't want to start later because people are starting to say, hey, get in early and get your protocols established because you really need to be focused on hygiene by the time the winter months come around because that's when cold and flu season seems to really hit us hard because we're all indoors more. And so, yeah, we want to start on August 12th, start strong with this idea of how do how do we work hard to get to a place where we normalize the protocols so that we can come through winter and have a healthy school year?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of answer one of these questions here. One of the parents was asking, I think we answered it, but clarifying that we are not suggesting an AM PM schedule that's kind of splitting the day, except for when it is in our orientation. In our orientation, we may be splitting the day, but otherwise we are splitting days of the week.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure that we kind of clarify that for scheduling purposes.
Yeah. And look, to be totally transparent, I mean, for everybody who's watching, if you hate these schedules, so do we. This idea of not coming back to school every day with our children is devastating. But having the guidelines that we have and the work that we have ahead of us, we're going to do what's right for all of our constituents. And so, yeah, we're not doing AM, PM for a lot of reasons. Again, nothing's off the table. We kind of like, though, this 2-day-a-week model with the middle day because we think it's going to line up with some of our partners in the community. And we think that it really gives us an opportunity to not just have one day of instruction, but like whatever you teach today, we can pick it up again tomorrow in that middle day. So, yeah, the AM PM might only be for an orientation. Orientation could also be structured other ways as well, but not for our baseline.
Yeah, so I'm going to hop to, I think I might have got all those logistics ones.
Okay.
There is a question in regards to, and more just a call out, John, as they're asking about the more research on the use of masks and the difference between the N95 mask.
Yeah.
I know we looked at a video yesterday that kind of called out the differences between a cloth mask and an N95 and who uses those. But a parent just was concerned and wanted us to continue to do our research, which I can say I think we 100% are behind that. Like, we want to continue to be up on the information and to make the right decisions for our clientele for sure.
Yes.
So
if I could look every parent in the eye tonight and be like, we don't think that masks are necessary, I would love to do that. I listened to Linda Darling-Hammond, who's one of the smartest researchers out there, on a webinar with the California State Superintendent for Public Instruction, and she was very clear, like, hey, the research indicates this. And so we will continue to consult the guidelines, and we do still have time. We still aren't there yet, right? So we're going to tell you in just a moment what next steps look like. We're going to come out in the week of June 26th with our first set of plans. On July 12th, we're going to come out again and say, okay, we're 1 month from opening. This is what we know. But the reality is, families, if new information comes out, if new information changes, we're building this so we can pivot, so that we can be flexible, because we don't want to do anything other than keep our students safe. So I agree. Let's keep our nose to the grindstone on what does it say. We had an interesting conversation on N95 masks and cloth masks because I thought, aren't N95 masks the safest ones? But then all of the recommendations are have the children wear cloth masks. We even looked up, what about paper masks? So yes, all the research needs to be done. And maybe we'll have a section of our documentation that's just about that, so we can collaborate. And honestly, families, if you've got good information that's research and evidence-based, my goodness, send it in. We'll drop it into our curation tank of information and make sure we consider that for sure.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I think even if we don't get a chance to answer all these questions tonight, we will make sure that we're doing frequently asked questions and make sure that we communicate that back out to our community for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to hop down to the section of kind of about academics. We have some questions that are in there.
While you do, I just want to tell everybody, the link to the surveys right there. We want to see survey results pop. Don't get off here and go to dinner. We need those survey results. Okay, sorry. Go on, Mrs. Caillou.
Oh, no, that's great. And a side note, then I'm going to say that Ms. Johnson texted in. Oh, sorry, Chris Richards checked it in. She said, "Hey, I think I know what classroom that is of the picture that you put of the classroom." She wasn't right, but it was a good guess. So, but I wanted to say thanks for participating and guessing for us.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So good to have you here.
So let's go to some academic questions. So we have a question: will after-school enrichment continue to be provided on campus?
Look, it is so important that we figure out a way to create community for our children. You know, I look at the conversation on sports for the high school kids, and I'm devastated to see like sports off the table in some regions. And I understand the fear of putting sports back on the table, but the reality is that we know that these things are not, some of the best protective factors against childhood anxiety and depression. So after school programs in our baseline right now are not in our baseline planning. However, we have a whole team planning that, so the minute we can move. We've had conversations about like, well, what can we do? Well, if you can't play basketball, can you play a horse? Hey, if you can't do sports, can you do esports and spread out? Like, hey, no bad ideas. Anything to get our children together and connected and feeling safe and feeling whole, it's on the table. Now, we told you we're starting with health and safety guidelines, so we're kind of there right now. But there is a team bubbling over here talking about how do we increase capacity to get to those things, and that is incredibly important. So yes, the answer is let's work on that one together.
That's awesome. So everybody is eager to get back to connecting to each other and to the community for sure. And that's enrichment brings that. The next question is, I'm going to kind of loop two of them together. It's, as we talk about academics and parents being empowered to help serve their children at home, right? It's a little bit tricky during distance learning. Parents have been kind of like, I don't know how to do that, or how do we do that? And so I'm asking some questions about what tools will parents have available to them to ensure their students are learning what they should be learning and supported. And what if my kid needs additional support? And then what will be required of the parents and students when they're not on campus? So, I mean, they're really good questions. They're kind of grouped together, right? So, do you want to take that, John?
Yeah, and hold me accountable if I don't answer it all, because there's a lot of pieces in there. But the reality is that we recognize that we raced to distance learning. We felt like our number one priority was to hold our community together. And I think we did as good a job as anybody of saying, hey, everybody, let's just try to stay connected. And we brought on those Google Meets, and that increased our capacity to do an even better job. As we look to the fall, it's going to look so different on that distance learning piece. And part of our survey tonight is like, hey, what is your capacity at home? I mean, it's not going to look like the spring where the kids it's kind of an independent study model. It's going to look different in the fall, where there's going to be a expectation where students are really completing more work, obtaining more actual instruction, meeting in more synchronized meets where they're either meeting with a teacher, an instructional aide, a grade level support network. So we're going to need to really tap into our parents and say, hey, do you have the capacity to help your student through that? Or B, do you need, if your student's in cohort B, if we were able to make BASE available during the day, would you use BASE and have BASE support your student through distance learning? Or C, like, hey, if this is why we're pushing so hard to figure out how to get to increased capacity. If we can get more students on campus, we can support those students. And so I think we're working on that now. So what tools will there be? Our teachers have already started the work this summer. They're already plotting out what it's going to look like in the fall. And they are, like we said, using a mix of resources. So it's not all digital. My goodness, if I put your child on a Google Meet for 8 hours a day where they were staring at the screen and watching a teacher walk around a classroom, that sounds terrible to me. Pedagogically, the way we approach education, instruction, opportunity to practice, feedback. Instruction, opportunity to practice, feedback. Add in some collaboration in there, and you got the Westlake model. And so we are trying to build this model that says, how will you get instruction? How will you get an opportunity to practice? How will you get an opportunity to collaborate? How will you get an opportunity to receive feedback? All of those buckets are being worked on by our teachers, and each one of them's got a little different, set of resources to go with it. But we need these days, these distance learning days, to be actual instruction, not something we could just kind of phone in. So I guess the question was, what type of supports would we have? I think you would have more resource support through the school in some type of online methodology or phone methodology where we had people supporting you, like, hey, my student's stuck on this part. Can you get on a Google Meet and help? We could pull things like that. It's really going to have to look different. So again, we are thinking about how to increase the capacity of our work so that school in that distance learning model is more meaningful, but we can't 100% rely on burying our people have to work, and we understand that. And so we're having to figure out what is the capacity of each of our homes and how can we support people in an equitable way. So many first responders out there who need to get out to work, and thank goodness for you. And we feel like, how can we support all of our families who are out there? So did that answer most of that, Jen?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's something key that you shared was that we're really soliciting some information from families right now. Like what kind of resources and what's your capacity to help support your children at home? And I think the more information we have is it helps us to be equipped to give the answers back and to be able to support families. Yeah. And I think as we go, we'll need to flesh that out, and we'll continue to keep our community out there telling us what they need, so that we can serve their families and their students the right way.
Yeah, and even though we don't have 100% of our families watching this video stream right now, but look, we have almost 100 families watching right now. If we've got 100 survey results back tonight, we'd have a sample size that said, okay, that's 1/6 of our whole campus. If 20% of the people said they needed this, then we could say, okay, what's 20% of our whole campus, and really start it. So every response tonight will help us generalize to our whole school population. So those Emily, Mrs. Batten just texted, we already have 37 results back. So keep it up, everybody. Got 50 more out there. Mrs. Caillou, I said that we're going to extend 15 minutes. It's 7:15 right now. We've been on for an hour and 15 minutes. But how many questions are left in the tank? Do you feel like can we knock out a couple more questions, or should we wrap it up?
Yeah, we have probably 5 to 10 more in here. They keep coming in with our families. So okay. I think one question I would like us to end on, maybe, John, for tonight, and the rest of them we'll make sure we answer at some level.
Okay.
Just about social emotional learning. It's come in that parents are really, we talked about it, maybe about recess and making sure that it's a priority to do morning meeting. Yeah. But just really talking about how can we make sure that social emotional needs are met, and that students are, as they're even continuing to have isolation because they might only be at school twice a week, they're still going to spend 5 of their day, not at school. So, how do you, you kind of address that, but I'd like to end with that note. How are we going to make that a priority?
Well, I think first of all, it's part of our mission. I mean, I know it sounds rhetorical, but we really live and breathe our mission. I mean, I think most of our staff members could at least echo the first half of our mission, right out of their mouths. We demonstrate what's possible in school and community, collaborate to create inspiring adults with academic and social emotional readiness to lead as global citizens. And that whole social emotional piece, I feel like our staff takes incredibly seriously. And hey, does everyone have room to improve all the time? Yes. Are we perfect? No, right? We're a school full of human beings trying to raise amazing human beings. That's what we're all doing, and that's messy. And so there are times when we have to reflect and be like, boy, we could have done that better. But as we walk into this fall, recognizing all these protocols that we have to follow by the guidelines of the state of California, our greatest challenge is what you're talking about. How do you follow these guidelines and make sure that we feel like a community and feel safe and feel like school? And it's not rhetorical. It's not rhetoric. And people who say it can't be done don't work at Westlake Charter School, because I don't know a single person at Westlake Charter School who's like, oh, we can't do social distancing and have school be fun. No teacher has said that to me yet. Our staff are like, hey, let's do what we need to do to be safe, and then let's make this Westlake. Already the structures around recess, the planning that's going into what kind of games kindergartners can play, because once they start to play, they'll forget that they, had a health screening at the gate on the way in. Once they start to play, they will adjust to whatever play looks like. When I traveled, when I was a much younger person, kicking around through third world countries and as a backpacker, studying the world, I saw children in third world countries playing with a plastic water bottle and a piece of string, and you would think that kid had a Nintendo Switch, because children are resilient and they make joy out of whatever the experience is that's offered. So I think our staff are going to say, hey, what's the given set of circumstances that we have, and what is the outcome that we're looking for? We're looking for joy and playfulness and fun, and we can do all that. Once they engage in play at recess and laughter, and if we come up with an air high five, if that's the new way that we celebrate, then you're gonna look around here and people be like, and that'll be amazing. Whatever becomes this fall is going to become through this lens of let's make social emotional real. Let's not look. Anybody thinks that we're going to line up kids at the gate and usher them into straight rows and sit 6 feet apart and everyone's going to face forward and we're just rote memorize wherever the teacher regurgitates, then that's not Westlake Charter School. We will figure out ways to collaborate and communicate and be creative and critical thinkers, and we will do it all through the lens of joyful learning. Say, I know I just start talking. It's like, John, stop. But the reality is, like, this is our most important charge right now. I promise we will get around to dividing fractions. But in the fall, we need to focus on repairing the trauma that was created from isolation. But we can't do it by throwing out the guidelines for safety, because there is nothing more traumatic than the idea that someone's going to get sick. A colleague of mine in New York is a principal at a school a little larger than ours, and they had 9 of their educators from their school site, 9 adults on respirators when New York got hit by the wave. They had a secretary at the school who died from COVID-19. Like, we will walk into this fall and we will focus on health and safety, and we will focus on social, emotional to make it feel joyful, but we can do both if we work together. And that, I think, is our charge. And so we won't focus on one at the expense of the other. We will focus on one so that we can the other. We will be safe, and then we will be joyful. So recess protocols, classroom protocols. You know our teachers aren't going to stand and deliver and just talk from the front of the whiteboard. They're going to create models where students are collaborating, and maybe we're collaborating with students who are in class. Maybe we're collaborating with kids who are on distance learning, and they're using digital platforms. We're going to have our students doing what our students do. And like we said, like, we can move outside and we can move to larger spaces. It could look any way we want it to look, because we're Westlake Charter School. We get to just follow these logistics and make it our own. And so I think it can be still fun. I think it can still be joyful, and I think it can feel safe. And we've put a lot of planning. I know I'm talking for a long time. Maybe you don't know this, families, but we put a lot of planning into the way that we construct our classrooms. At a lot of schools, the computer program says you push a button and it organizes kids into, whoop, there's 28 kids in that classroom. But at Westlake Charter School, our teachers sit for a whole day and go, hey, Johnny and Bobby are like best friends. We should put them in a class together. Oh, look, Susie and Cindy, there is a lot of thought and consideration into making sure that everybody has a person. And we've very purposefully done that this fall, because we know we've been separated since March. And so when we come back together, I want every child walking into a classroom going, oh, at least that person, I've got that person. That friend, that one's on my cohort. And so our staff did amazing hard work to do that. And I think that's going to aid to our ability to really focus on social emotional learning. Sorry, Jen, are there 100 more questions coming in? Or
There's multiple, but I just wanted to leave and maybe say this. We've had a couple of questions just come in about our teachers and concern for them to be able to do in-class learning and distance learning. And I just am, I love our community that they care so deeply about the educators and we do too, you know, and partially as we look at scheduling, we've talked about how do we help balance that to be able to empower our teachers to have enough time to connect with all of their students that are home and at school, but also to prepare and to make sure that they're able to give feedback and able to really make it valuable their time. And so I think I could say, and you can say, that we've taken that into account, because our teachers are very important to us too. They are, you know, if they're well taken care of, then they can take better care of our students and our families. And so I think that, you know, I appreciate that question. I think as we go, we keep that in the forefront of our brains too. We've talked about this too, that safety and health is not just our physical, but it's our emotional, and that includes our staff, that we take care of them too. So thanks for those questions. I keep going back to that leadership team this past week, John, the 35 teachers on that screen, really just caring about our community, and really their conversations are about academics, but they're also about the SEL and how do we keep help our kids as they come back to school. So I just am, I love to have these questions from our families are exactly what our teachers are feeling. And I just think what a good community we have that are really, really thinking about what's best for our students and staff and health and safety. And then we can do all those other things. So thanks, John, for giving us so much information tonight. I appreciate it.
Well, it's definitely a collaborative effort. The 35 teachers you mentioned in the leadership team capacity they're really building the infrastructure that we're all going to build school upon. And so thank you to our amazing staff, our incredible teachers, all of the administrative staff and the classified team members who've been helping to work through this summer. It's really a shout out to the whole organization. Great teams here at Westlake, and we're all honored to be a part of the team. Ms. Kaya, let's talk through real quick for the 77 people still logged in, and what's next. So today's June 15th. We promised we'd come out with some information by June 15th, and this is the information that we have at hand. We're going to take your survey results because we are listening, and we're going to use those results along with some staff survey results and all these guidelines to really craft out what we think everyone should have by about June 26th when the Westlake Weekly goes out at the end of June. Then we'd love for our staff to take a little break. Like, hey, staff, you should get a couple of weeks of summer before we all jump back in. By July 12th, which is 1 month from opening, we'd love to wake up, look at the plan that we put together and say, does this all really apply? Has anything changed? And we'll really start communicating with our families weekly at that point, saying, hey, we're 4 weeks from opening, we're 3 weeks from opening, we're 2 weeks from opening. And we'll just keep building our capacity so that by opening day, everybody knows what's happening. Everybody knows what they can expect. Everybody knows how they can be a part of the program. And every question is able to be answered by our team. So that is the steps going forward. Tonight was wonderful. Mrs. Kaya, thank you for moderating this. I know there's a lot of Google Forms and whatnot. Thank you for moderating. And families who are tuned in, look, thank you, Westlake Charter School. These are incredibly trying times for our entire community. But to know that you are here with us and that we are here with you, like we're in this together, I got to be honest, like I know 1,000 people who work in education, and I'd say this in front of them, and I'd say this in front of you. There's no place I'd rather be than right here with this team during this crisis because it's being handled differently everywhere. And right here, handling it with our families in collaboration feels right to me. So thank you, families. Thank you, Mrs. Caillou. I'm looking forward to you launching the school year as our principal. Thank you to all of you watching. And as always, let's explore. Now I gotta somehow turn this live stream off so that it looks really clever. Let's see, how do I turn the live stream off? Thanks, Mrs. Caillou. Thank you, everybody.